Okay, so we're trying a whole new thing today, which is introducing yogurt into the sourdough bread. The reading that I've been doing, kind of the pros, one, you boost the protein, so it becomes a higher protein bread, and it softens the dough. My dough has been pretty darn soft. I think that it's because I tend to like to do kind of a higher hydration dough, and it's really soft and delicious. So softening that even further, fine. But I'm interested in a little bit higher protein loaf, just see what that does. And also for gut stuff, because yogurt has got a lot of beasties in it that are good for your gut. The yogurt I'm using, I would have just called this phage, but there's a little pronunciation guide here that says Fage. So we're using Fage yogurt, which it's a whole milk yogurt, and it's very clean. There's nothing in it outside of preservatives. It's got a lot of cultures, and there's just milk, cream, live active cultures. So I'm liking this one. And I think because what I've been reading, it kind of makes the dough firmer. I think I'm going to boost the overall hydration rate a little bit. So we're going to make a 77.2% hydration. And I'm making 2 batches of 2 loaves. So the numbers I'm going to be giving you right now are based on 2 loaves, and we do it twice. I'm doing 2 batches of 2 loaves because I'm going to put inclusions in one of them and no inclusions in the other. Oh, my coffee's going to be boiling in a minute. Yeah, baby. All right. We are about to do a distraction from our normal program. I grind my own coffee. Smells so good. And then I pour hot water. I want coffee so thick that it's got an oil slick on the top. And this will give me that. Stir this up with a little spoon, and then I'm going to let it sit and brew for a minimum of 5 minutes. 6 or 7 is better. Then I will press it. Then I'm going to drink it, every bit of it. I don't drink coffee all day. I just drink my 1 French press of coffee in the morning, and usually 2 good mugs of that, and I'm good for the day. All right, so we're going to do a 77% hydration rate. So that would be if we took 750 grams of water plus the 100 grams of water that's in the starter, that's 850. And if we take the 1,000 grams of flour plus the 100 grams that's in the starter, that's 1,100. So 850 divided by 1,100 gives me a 77.2% hydration rate. The added wrinkle here is the yogurt. How do we handle the yogurt? Do we just add it? Well, yogurt is liquidy. So I'm going to substitute a portion of that water for yogurt. In this case, I'm putting a 24% yogurt, 24% of the water. So that means I'm going to put 562 grams of water and 188 grams of yogurt in each of these bins. You can do it. 562. Then I'm putting 188 grams of the yogurt in each one. Now normally, if you've watched any of my vids before, I always do an autolyse where you combine the water and the flour together and let them sit for an hour or more so that the flour gets thoroughly hydrated with the water. I just do that the night before when I build out my starter. It's easy, it's ready to bake when I get up in the morning. It gives the dough a good head start on forming, I don't know what, the magic stuff that makes it all stick together. But since this has got active cultures in it, and this is sourdough bread, I didn't want to do anything chemically that would start that fermenting overnight before I've done all the stretching and folding and so forth. So I'm building my autolyse out in the morning. So now I'm going to put 188 grams of yogurt. Oops, that got me to 7. I didn't zero it out, so that means I need to get to 750. 752, close enough. I'm going to use a whisk and really thoroughly combine this yogurt with the water. Now I'm going to put 1,000 grams of flour in each of these. $400, $600, $700, $800. $950, $980, $998, $1,001. All right, so we're going to start with this first one. I'm going to dampen my hands a little, though. That's probably pissing in the wind. I'm very interested to see how this dough behaves with the yogurt in it. I think this is so dry. I'm actually going to pull it out and do a little bit of kneading. With the autolyse, you're just wanting to get it combined, but this is so dry, I'm not sure how well I can get it combined with just my my hands in the bowl. So we are learning together. And this, I can already tell, there's not going to be much slap and fold going on with this dough. So we're kind of just going back to the old-fashioned kind of kneading. Look how dry that is. It's funny that yogurt would do that. Well, I guess it's the protein. All right, I would say that is a reasonable ball of autolyse. Throw this back in here and we're going to let that sit for about an hour. Okay, so this autolyse has been sitting for about an hour, and now we're going to build the dough. So I've got my starters here. I make these out of rye dough, rye flour, and you see they've got lots of bubbles on the sides and the bottoms. They've not quite doubled in size overnight. This is a really dense starter because I use the rye, but I like the flavor. And I also like that it's a different color than the rest of the dough. It helps me to determine that I have in fact combined all that starter in. There we go. So people ask me, why don't I do all this dough at once? Well, I'm not very good at doing the pre-shape without degassing, letting the gas out. So I do whatever dividing of the dough I'm going to do much earlier in the process. Boy, this autolyse, look at that. This is super dense. Boy, the yogurt really changes the character of this dough. Very interesting. It's, I mean, I've almost got a window pane already, so I'm gonna kind of spread this out a little bit inside here and then put in to each of these my 200 grams. So here I've got I'm going to put in 200 grams of starter. That's 195. $197. Oops. I didn't zero out. I'm gonna guess that that is close to 200. I didn't measure this right. So let's just put that little extra. I'd rather have extra than not enough. That's that. Now I'm gonna zero this out. And I know that's pretty close because each one of these had about 220 grams of starter in it. So I'm gonna call that good enough. I'm gonna zero it out again and put in 24 grams of salt. So I'm gonna get it combined enough in here, wetting my hands, that I can pull it out and then yeah, this is very dense. It's really interesting how the yogurt impacts this dough. Look at that. That is not how it usually works. I'm assuming that's the yogurt that's doing that. So I'm gonna do 8 minutes of just regular kneading the way you would a yeasted dough. Same goal, look how dry that is, really interesting, is to fully combine that starter and salt into the dough. You can see that dark starter in there. We want that to be thoroughly incorporated. So blind leading the blind here. I'm keeping my hands damp and just mushing it up for starters. That's been about 8 minutes. You can see little speckles of the starter in there. It's well distributed. It's really important that this dough, when you add the starter and the salt in, be thoroughly mixed, because that's what tells the whole dough project to start eating and to start fermenting, and that we want to be uniform throughout the whole loaf. So I'm gonna let this sit for a half hour and then we'll come and do our first stretch and fold. It has been a half hour. We're gonna do our first stretch and fold. Oops. Inside out. You know, I can't tell you how often I put clothes on inside out. In fact, I find it easier to put clothes on if it is inside out. There's something about snaking my head into an inside out dress and then finding the arms that somehow works better or easier for this little twisted brain than inside right, whatever. Yet another irrelevant but slightly twisted fact about Roxanne that you were all not wondering about. So, if the process of combining this was any indication, I bet the normal stretchiness is going to be very different in this enriched dough. And I've enriched this with yogurt, but one can enrich it with eggs, one can enrich, not necessarily sourdough, I've never tried those things. I can't imagine why you couldn't, but this particular dough, you see, yeah, that's not very stretchy. So I'm gonna work it on the bench. Out you go. Grab it. I'm kind of letting gravity do its thing. I don't want it to rip, but I want it to stretch as much as possible because that builds the structure. Yeah, this is working pretty well. Now I'm doing a handful of coil folds where I'm just kind of folding it over onto itself. The dough is kind of dry, not sticky at all. I'm going to put these back in their Tupperwares, let them sit for another half hour, and then I will be back for the second set of stretch and folds. The best practice, I always keep a damp cloth so that I can wipe down my workbench in between each of these processes, because again, we've discussed how the dough is like, if you let it sit there and dry, it's like cement. So there we are. I'll see you in a half hour. Okay, we're going to do our second stretch and fold with this weird yogurt dough. Look at Dwayne fixing my camera. Thank you, sweetie. This has got nice little bubbles. I'll be interested to see how the bulk fermentation goes, because not only do we have the starter, which is got active fermentation going on, but it's also got yogurt in it, which has got active cultures in it. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the overall fermentation. All right. I think this time, because it fought me so hard, I'm going to try splitting it up first before I do the stretch and folds. You out. Stretch. Stretch. And then some coils. All right, and I'll be back in a half hour to do the next set of coil folds. Here comes our third stretch and pull, or in this case, coil fold. Coil. And the fourth one. Loosen it up. Dump it out. You can do it. Coil. really beautiful dough. Feels really nice. Here we go. Really nice. Okay, I've got one more coil and fold to do. You know, if you go online, they say do, 3 to 4. I never skip them. I do 4 to 6 because I'm at high altitude, and it is, that's one of the things to help form the dough better when there's less pressure in the air to keep it from exploding out. Here we have the final coil fold. I did the third one off camera. And this dough is so hearty, I think I could probably get away with fewer stretch and folds or coil folds. But at high altitude, I never skimp on those because we've got less pressure here. But you see, that's held. It's full. It's coil since the last time we did this. But I'm going to give it another one. If I've got like inclusions in it, I may do 5 or 6 rather than the 3 or 4 you see in the last one. Yeah. I'm really interested to see how these bake up. Really nice. So far, so good. All right. Well, I'll see you back around 7 p.m. tonight, and we'll see whether or not I miscalculated. These are 72 degrees. My little handy dandy chart says that should take 10 hours to rise, but it raises faster at high altitude. And I imagine it raises faster with yogurt in it because there's active cultures in there. So we will see. Okay, so we set these out at 72 degrees, the dough. At 1 o'clock, it's 10:30. So it took about 9.5 hours for this to proof up to about 60% of its original size. I already shaped the first 2. And you can see from this right here was where it was when we started. And it's not quite doubled. It's, about 65%. That's where we want to be. And I find the more I do this final step, the less and less flour. This is the only step where we put any flour on the surface or my hands. And I'm just doing a very light dusting of this. And this is rice flour, which doesn't stick to the dough. This pulls away easily from the side. There's bubbles. That's what we want. Got bubbles on the bottom. I think this is decently proofed. If given a choice between underproofing and overproofing, I'd rather go for underproofed. Because with overproofed, it means that the starter has run out of starches and other stuff to eat, so it starts eating the structure of the dough, right? And then it starts getting really weak. So this, it's bouncy, and I'm just gonna kind of gently nudge this into kind of a rectangle. The faster I move, the better. I heard somebody describe it that if you touch dough like a hot stove, it won't stick to your hands, and I buy that. So you see I've got very little flour on here, and that's gluing it nicely together. So now I'm stitching this. I've heard somebody call that shoulders, waist, and hips. Would this be knees? And now I'm going to pull this and kind of roll it here. I'm trying to build tension and trap as much of the air, keep as much of the air trapped as possible. So I'm pinching these. And of course I want this to go into here. I'm going to throw some added tension to this by kind of supporting the loaf on one side and scooting and cupping it. Scoot, cup, scoop, cup, scoop, cup. You see it's getting longer and tauter. Do this a few more times. And then I'm going to roll it over onto my hand and throw it into the banneton. Alright, so now I'm going to let these two loaves rest for 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. And this dough will relax a little bit and get a little bit stickier, and then I can do the final stitching on the top. See you in 10 or 15. Okay, so I've let this dough rest for 10 or 15 minutes. I was petting the kitty, so I'll rinse off my hands. And I'm going to just stitch this. I'm pulling from one side to the other, and just adding a little bit more tension to the loaf before it goes into the fridge. You wouldn't think that 10 minutes to let it relax would make that much of a difference, but it does. It just gives it a little bit more sticky, which when you kind of crisscross it like this and pinch it shut, it stays. And it stays better if it isn't just completely coated in flour, which is why I'm using less and less flour at this final stage. All right, now I am going to put a little bit of rice flour on top of this. And then I'm going to cover these with shower caps and put them in the fridge for the cold proof. And the cold proof should be minimum of 8 hours. I just go overnight. Right, so it's 11 o'clock now. I'll get up in the morning, futz around, make some coffee. I'll probably get these into the oven by 9 or 10. So they will have had 10 to 12 hours to do their cold proof. So I will see you in 10 to 12 hours. We will turn these out, score them, bake them, and see how the yogurt experiment went. Okay, so we're going to bake this bread. Remember, we started with two loaves. We did 4 loaves, but we can only bake them 2 at a time. I was also planning yesterday to do inclusions on 2 of them. I ran out of time, so these are going to be 4 basic yogurt loaves. And I also decided to try something interesting and do some decorative scoring on the top of these. because I haven't experimented with that much. There's a guy on YouTube that I love, Jack the Baker. He's this little British guy. I don't know if he's little. He's adorable. And he also talks, you know, he impressed me when I first started baking sourdough. And he said, you know, learn how to bake the bread, then you can get fancy. That's me paraphrasing. But that made sense to me. Well, now I've been pretty consistently making decent loaves, so I'm going to try getting fancy today. Look at that. It's holding its shape. That's kind of a first harbinger of what I want to see out of this loaf. So it's I'm going to try, you know, if we think about this, this is going to expand, right? If we've done everything right. And so putting, doing scoring where it expands, that's going to give us these patterns where it'll be a different color. I'm putting a little bit of flour on the top of this so that when it does expand, what'll be on the inside will be whatever the color is of the baked dough inside. And then it's going to be contrasted by the fact that I just put a little bit of flour on the top of this. That's the idea. Blind leading the blind here. I've got my straight edge razor so I don't cut myself. And I'm going to do some long, shallow slits in this. And then I'm doing my scoring, which I'm doing at an angle. Some people are really good at doing this fast in one big swoop. I'm not that good at it, but I'll get an ear out of this. The faster I go, the better it goes. And I do it at an angle so that I get a little bit of a lip or an ear. So that's all the cutting I'm going to do on this one. I'm going to get this into the pan. You want some means of producing some steam while it bakes. Some people put an ice cube in here, some people put water in the bottom, some people spray it with a spray bottle. I'm a caveman, so I just sprinkle it with water. And so far, the sourdough police have not come to the door. Sprinkle, 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 sprinkle. Good enough. All right. Now, and by the way, these raised, I put them in the fridge at 11 o'clock last night, and it's about noon. So these have had 13 hours of cold proofing. So these are going to go in the oven, and they're going to go in at 470, covered for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to turn the temperature down, but keep them covered for another 20 minutes and only brown them up at the end. I prefer to have the crust a little bit softer than some people do. So that's kind of the number that I've arrived at. There again, this has got yogurt in it, so who knows, that may change the whole bake. But I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so here's the moment of truth. The bake on these look great. It's been cooling for about an hour and a half, and it's still warm. I can't help myself. I'm going to have to cut into it. Design isn't prominent. I mean, you can see it, but there's not much contrast. Who cares? All right, I'm going to get the chopping board and let's cut into these. The other two loaves are in the oven. Here's the crumb. Squeezes nicely. Smells great. we gotta put some butter on this bad boy. The crumb is really soft. The flavor is a little bit tartar. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so I like this yogurt loaf. There's not an obvious difference in flavor, just a little bit sharper, kind of at the back of the tongue. It baked nice. It raised nice. Here's my ear. That's what the crumb looks like. Very nice. All right. We have made our first yogurt loaves. They're a little bit higher protein. Flavor's nice. The dough behaved very strangely. Not strangely, just very differently. Bulk fermentation was about the same length of time. That wasn't impacted in any significant way. Yeah, I'm gonna put this on the list.